Hey, good morning, everyone, for whom this is Saturday morning as I go live on Instagram. I am so excited to do part 4 of the series that I've been running through with you, which is on how to choose the right resources for your interior journey. Now, I found myself just getting, a little bit more excited when I was preparing the slides for today's live, because I was just thinking, these all are things that I so wish that more people would be aware of, because I really believe it would help so many people who are feeling frustrated or stuck in their interior journey, right? So of course it depends. Different people are at different points of the interior journey. There are people for whom they're not even aware of the interior journey yet. And then there are those who are getting aware of it. And then those who have decided they want to embark on it. And then those who have been on it for some time, right? Maybe they are committed to making the journey and they've tried different things and they have experienced some improvement or some progress in the interior journey. And then after a while, it seems to have plateaued. Now, the thing is, if you don't know what makes up the interior journey, the different components that make up the interior journey, it's going to be hard for you to tell what is missing. Why is it that you've plateaued, or why is it that what you found helpful in the past isn't helpful anymore, right? So that's what I think my work is about. That's what I'm excited about doing, which is helping people see the bigger picture, see the connections that maybe they haven't on their own become aware of about what goes into the interior journey. So for example, that it's not just a spiritual journey, it's also a human formation journey, an emotional healing journey, that it is something that consists of our mind, our hearts, our spirits, our bodies as well. So even just that, when I started out on the interior journey, I had no idea that all these components mattered. I just thought, for me, because I started the interior journey through the lens of faith, I thought that's only the spiritual that mattered, honestly. And I thought that if I took care of the spiritual stuff, that I automatically should become more, grounded, more patient, more loving. I had no idea that in order to be more patient, more loving, all that stuff, to show up as a better human being or a less volatile human being, to be more secure in myself, that required human formation and that required emotional healing. So I had no idea about that, right? I just thought if I really became very committed in the spiritual journey, in building my relationship with Christ and taking my faith seriously, that somehow automatically I would be a more mature human being. So I wish somebody had told me earlier on, but then again, on the other hand, I don't regret it, because I think it's part of my journey to discover all these things for myself and to piece together what helped and what didn't help. And so I'm excited to do this series because I think it's also the first time I'm putting all these things together in a somewhat systematic manner to share with someone else, to share with you guys. But it's also exciting for me because it's the first time I'm seeing this come together, in a coherent structure, right? So I hope that some of you at least share this excitement of mine. So without further ado, let me just delve into today's session, okay? So let's do a bit of a recap first. If you are only finding this, jumping in this part of the series and you haven't watched the first 3 parts, I encourage you to, if you're catching this live, sure, you're welcome to stay. But if you haven't also caught the first 3 parts, please go back after that and watch that, because this series, it builds on, each episode or each session builds on the previous sessions, okay? That's the way I can lead people into deeper understanding, by building steps. So in the first 3 sessions of this series, I talked about 3 common mistakes that interior pilgrims make. And if you're not aware of these mistakes, you may be making them without realizing, and then not knowing why it is that you're plateauing or that you can't really keep progressing in your interior journey. And then in the second part of the series, I talked about making space, why it's important to make space for the interior journey, right? So even before we talk about doing the interior work, really the nitty-gritty interior work of healing, etc., we need to understand that you have to see this as a whole lifestyle change. It's not just something else to add on to your plate in order for you to actually succeed in making some progress in the interior journey. And I also talked about some resources that could help you learn how to make space for the interior journey. And then in part 3, which was the last session, I kind of narrowed down further to help you see how can you tell if the resources that you are looking at, or that maybe the activities that you are already busily involved in, and you may think they're formative for you, formative as in it's forming you, how to tell if it's actually forming your interior journey or maybe some other dimension of your life. Okay, because there's a big difference between resources and activities that are growing, let's say your skills in listening to somebody else, or facilitation, or leadership, or teaching, or any of that stuff, versus resources that are helping you grow your interior space, your own healing, to build up your core. Okay, so that was session 3. So today, building on that, we're going to be looking at the difference between root, okay, which is like the foundation kind of work, and canopy. So I'm going to show you a picture in a moment, but clearly, I'm asking you to imagine a tree right now, right? The root, and then the canopy, which is the beyond the foundational kind of work. So even when we're looking at just the interior kind of work, when we're looking at resources that target specifically your interior journey, we need to differentiate between foundational and beyond foundational kind of resources and kind of work, all right? So here's an image of a tree, right? And often, what we see in real life is not what you see in this picture, because we can't see what's below the ground, right? So usually if you see a tree, we see maybe just the trunk, maybe parts of the roots that may be exposed above ground, but generally we can't really see the roots. We see the trunk, we see the branches, we see the canopy, right? So the canopy is what's kind of like green in this picture, the branches, the leaves, the foliage, right? And if there are fruits, flowers or fruits, that's all happening in the canopy space. The roots are what's underground, right? So it's in a similar way, when we talk about interior work, we're talking about what's inside, right? It's what's connecting to the core of us, not just how we show up, what is visible on the outside. But even what's visible on the outside, when we understand interior work, we know that it is what feeds what shows up on the outside, all right? When we have no concept of the interior journey, many of us, we're just concerned with the cosmetic, in the sense of we're concerned with what people see, right? We're concerned, for example, with how green our leaves are, that we have pretty flowers, that we may believe that we should bear fruit, and we're racking our brains how to make more fruit appear in our canopy. Well, you have to be healthy, right? Your roots have to be going deep into good soil. And then if everything is as it is over time, depending on the kind of plant you are, right? The life cycle, how long it is meant by your design, the design that God has given you, how and when you'll bear fruit, and what fruitfulness will look like. So different plants, fruitfulness will look different, right? So when we talk about interior work, then I think a lot of times we get caught up with canopy stuff, right? The things that people will see that we hope will help others, and we neglect or really don't understand what's the root work that needs to be done, when really we need to build the foundations first, okay? So in my definition that I've been sharing with you about the interior journey, or why we make the interior journey, there were kind of 2 parts. First part is that you want to know with greater clarity who you are, right? And then to be able to live, choose, and respond from that true self that you are, authentically, unapologetically, with integrity, confidence, and compassion, right? That's part of the desire of the interior journey. Now, this first part, in my description of why we want to make the interior journey, is grounded in root work, okay? You can't do this if your roots are not grounded in good soil, if you don't have a more integrated core self, okay? The second part of why many people want to do interior work right? And that was the case for me too. I wanted to know why I was created. What's the reason I'm alive? What unique mission do I have in this world? I've had this wonderment since I was a teenager, right? There must be some reason I'm here. There must be some reason I'm the way that I am, right? Even though I don't really know very clearly who I am, what I am, I felt that maybe if I knew why I'm here, maybe it will help me feel better about being here. Does it make sense? So that was me, a young me, without having a solid core. I mean, being very lonely and wounded without really understanding that I'm wounded, seeking meaning and purpose through hoping to know what's my mission. All right, so at that point, of course, I had no idea that there's no way I could even understand my mission, let alone live it, without letting God build up my foundation first. So the Canopy stuff is the second part, which is, you wish to know the unique path and work that your life is meant to bless the world with. The fruit bearing, basically, of you coming into the fullness of who you are in God. When you are rooted in good soil and things happen as they should in God's time, in God's way, and in your freedom, as you grow in freedom, in time, naturally, you will bear fruit. Right? So this is something that comes after, and it's not something that can be forced. So there are these two parts, the root work and the canopy work. Now, the root work really can be summed up, okay? The root work, the foundation work can be summed up as becoming more securely attached to God and to yourself in your core, all right? Again, it can be summarized as becoming more securely attached to God and to yourself in your core. Okay, securely attached, that's kind of a term now that's a bit in vogue. It refers to attachment styles. Another way of putting it would just be you become secure, more secure in being loved, in your knowledge, not just head knowledge, but like your whole body knows. You can relax, okay? Your body can relax into the truth that holds you, not just cognitively, but your whole body, that you are loved by God and by yourself. All right. And foundational root work in the interior journey is all about the different ways in which we can build this security. Okay. And this is what is sorely lacking in everyone who's wounded. Right. And yet at the same time, this is something that so few of us realize is what we need work in first. And then we try and do other stuff, like higher order stuff, before we have this in place. And often that's why we struggle, even though we have no idea that's why we struggle. Okay, so that's the root work. And just a quick reminder, this is the diagram of my 3 layers of life, right? When I say the secure attachment is in the core of myself, so that's at the very center, okay? We're talking again, interior work is dealing with the very core of ourselves, and that security of knowing that I am loved, knowing in my body, in my bones, not just having to remind myself and convince myself God loves me or that I'm okay. When we keep having to remind ourselves this way, it means that our body doesn't know it yet. When your body knows this truth, you'll find you don't need to keep reminding yourself of that. You will know how to enter that truth without having to use your mind to remind you, okay? In a sense, what would shift would be you would know how to get connected back with that root, with that groundedness, all right? So, what are some examples of foundation building inner work? Or some signs that we're building the foundation of our inner work? So when you find you can become more able to spend time with yourself, right? With more compassion and less shame and self-criticism, that means that you're doing foundation building work. Okay, so inner work that helps you become more able to be with yourself with more compassion, less criticism, less shame, that builds your foundation, that's strength, that's building your root. All right. Developing habits of healthy introspection. Okay, by healthy introspection, I mean it's not that kind of closed loop, obsessive rumination. That's not healthy introspection. Healthy introspection allows us to be with ourselves and see ourselves, right? and hold ourselves. So some habits would be on the spiritual side, for example, the Ignition Examine, which I have done a whole entire episode and live before about how the Ignition Examine can help build my sense of security with God, secure attachment with God. Or journaling, right? Could be spiritual journaling or just in general kind of journaling to attune to myself. So there's that word, attuning to. Attuning to is like being able to be present and being able to see and hear and listen to ourselves and to experience God seeing, hearing, attending to us, being seen, being heard, being held, being loved. That's attunement. Okay, so whatever resources help us to build our ability to attune to ourselves or to build our ability to experience God attuning to us, and then us being present to Him attuning to us, that is root kind of interior work. That's foundational interior work. Okay, so some example could be in a child healing work, internal family systems. A lot of this is specifically on rebuilding the relationship we have with ourselves. Okay, or like I mentioned just now earlier, the example of the Ignition Examine that helped me to experience God attuning to me. And another foundation building thing would be developing the habit of being supported regularly by a qualified another person, right, to enter our interior space more deeply and to navigate there more safely. Now, this is something I cannot overstate the importance of this. We really need a guide, okay? Like if you want to go hiking on some trail that you're not familiar with, you want to go mountain climbing, for those of you who may be nature buffs, or anything, you want to learn something more difficult, who do you need? You need a teacher, you need a trainer, you need a coach. If you're going on a hiking trail in the wilderness or climbing a mountain, you need experienced guides. It doesn't matter how much you think you have built up your strength compared to the past, right? It's rather foolish and foolhardy to try and make this journey without someone that understands the terrain, right? So it's a habit that a lot of us have to develop, because part of being a trauma survivor, a complex trauma survivor, is this inordinate need to be independent, okay? Maybe not for everyone, but for many of us, there is an inordinate need to be independent, to rely just on myself and not on other people. That itself is a response to our trauma, because maybe in our life experiences, somehow we have been disappointed or betrayed. We find it hard to trust someone else to be there for us. So it's safer, so to speak, to just rely on ourselves. But the journey can't be made by ourselves. So part of the habits that we need to develop and part of the root part of interior journeying is learning to be vulnerable, learning to discern also how to choose the right qualified people to guide us or mentor us and journey with us. Okay, that is part of the interior work that is important. And also because that's the only way we can do this safely, especially as we enter deeper spaces in our interior life that we're not familiar with. You need an other. Right? It's like if you go rock climbing, you need somebody down there holding, that is connected to you as part of your safety support system. There has to be something that will catch you if you fall, so that it's okay that you fall. So, okay, that's part of foundation building. And another part of foundation building is, getting to the point where we are self-starting. Okay, that we are on our own intentional and consistent in prioritizing the interior journey versus being reliant on others to maintain our momentum. Now, at the earlier points of the interior journey, so this happens in stages, okay? It's normal. It's very, very normal. At the start, usually, as we become more aware that maybe we need to make this journey, we still think, it's so hard to have to make this journey. It's too effortful, it's too difficult. I don't want to do it. Right? Then maybe some crisis hits and makes you convinced, okay, I have to make this journey because I don't think anything else is going to help me. I need to make the interior journey. Maybe it becomes a little bit more urgent and, we put in some effort. But then as we start, then we realize, wow, this actually requires a lot of commitment and consistency, right? And it's hard. That's why we have people to help us. Like I said in the earlier slide, we have maybe spiritual directors, therapists, mentors, coaches that can help us, in a sense, be accountable, right? So at that stage, many of us will say, I want to put these things in place, like having someone that can help me be accountable, because I need that motivation to help me be consistent in my work, right? In my inner work. But as you progress in your interior journey, you will find that this also will shift. You will come to a point where you don't need these qualified others to be a reason for you to be motivated to do the inner work, so that when you have your appointment with them, for example, you've kind of like done your homework, or you have something to show. I mean, that can help at the stage before this. But at some point, you'll find no one's more motivated than you are to be consistent in the inner work. This is especially the case when you've begun to start tasting some of the early fruits of your inner work. You begin to see the difference that it makes in your life. Then you'll find, you will show up on your own, even if no one is checking on you. And you will still be keeping these resources in place. Let's say you're a spiritual director, you're a therapist. But this is a stage where often a pilgrim at this stage of the journey may need to see the person a little less often, okay? Because there's so much that you're able to do on your own. You're very motivated, and you just need to continue to have that support. So building the foundation, root work, is also helping us to reach that point where we are self-starting and committed, okay? Let's give you a sense of the continuum. Foundation building also includes whatever helps us to be more comfortable, more able to tolerate uncomfortable emotions, difficult emotions. The fears that we have, they will always still come back. There will be things that trigger us, right? So resources that help us develop the ability to regulate our emotions, to know how to soothe ourselves, to know how to recenter ourselves, right? Resources that help us in that process also become more confident of our own judgment, of our own gut sense of things, and to be able to make decisions without external validation. Now, survivors of complex trauma almost always are uncomfortable with our own emotions. We try and avoid it, numb ourselves, or just run away from it, or whatever it is, right? So this is important root work. And also, survivors of complex trauma, those of us who are wounded in our core, are often very not confident about our own ability to make sound and good decisions. And we may need a lot of external validation. We may need some authority figure to endorse our thinking. We may need a close one to reassure us that what we're doing is the right thing, right? Now, this to some extent is normal. It's good to have some kind of check, right? Even as we're more mature and more healed, it's good to have trustworthy people to kind of confirm, let's say, our discernment. But there's a huge, huge difference between you already being confident and reasonably confident that this is indeed the right decision for you, and you are ready to make that decision even if you meet opposition, and you're confident that this is the right decision, and then still checking in with like one or two trusted others who get you at this level as well, who are also people of wisdom and discernment, who are maybe interior pilgrims who have been making this journey, or particular experts in particular fields that have something to do with the kind of decision that you're making, right? But the source of confidence and groundedness in making this decision is already in your core self. You're not reliant on them. Versus if you're still early on in the journey, you'll find that you feel like you have no confidence in your own opinion. You feel like I need to confirm. You keep feeling I need to check. Am I thinking wrong? Is this, is this what you think? What do you think? So if you find yourself with a constant need to always check with an authority or, someone that someone close to you, to validate your thinking and to validate your decision-making process, then this is an area of foundation building that you really still need to do. Okay, because we need to become more confident of our own judgment and decisions without external validation in order to do the higher order canopy kind of inner work, right? Okay, so what kind of resources might help us with foundation building? Okay, so first of all, there are many self-learning resources. By self-learning, I refer to like books, podcasts, videos, things that you could just sign up and, in a sense, in your own time, find out more about and practice. There are many, many good resources out there. And I would say, by and large, when you are ready and committed to do the inner work, this is probably where we begin. All right. And not just where we begin, I would think that even as you progress further in the interior journey, you will still find more of these kind of self-learning resources to support you as you go. All right. So the resources that support the development of your foundational interior resources would include both like spiritual and psychological, okay, kinds of resources. So for example, I said like inner child healing, about internal family systems. These are modalities that can help you harmonize the fragmented in relationships you have within yourself. Things like somatic healing, to even learn about it before you actually experience it. This is, of course, important. All of this is important to experience, but you can begin, right? And even after you've begun, you continue to deepen your understanding through these self-learning resources. Things like the Ignatian Examine, right? Learn about it, read about it, find helpful resources on it. I've shared some in the past. Or contemplation, right? Or the basics of discernment, which I also talked a little bit about in part 2 of the series. And I shared a couple of resources, books that are very helpful, that I found very helpful in that. Okay, so first, there are a lot of resources for self-learning. That's important. But I want to say, very, very, very important, I mentioned this just now only, that beyond doing self-learning, it is so important that you make sure you have one-to-one depth support systems. Okay, one-to-one depth support systems. Okay, so for example, like spiritual direction, individual spiritual direction, counseling, individual counseling I think generally may be individual, but like therapy, life coaching, right? And specifically the one-to-one kind, because some of these, they have one-on-one and they have group versions of it, that work on your foundations. Okay, I can't, again, overstate the importance of having this kind of resources in place, because everyone is unique and everyone is different. And to a great extent, all of us, our rhythm, the length of time that we need to work on particular areas of our interior life is going to vary. The highest benefit, you can say, about one-to-one depth systems, support systems, okay, would be that they can meet you where you are at and be with you for as long as you need where you are at, because there is no pre-planned program or like agenda or curriculum that you need to gonna go through. You don't have to, you don't have to wait for others when you're ready to move further, or you don't have to feel rushed that you're behind anyone else because there's no one else to compare with, right? So that's a strength, a very important strength of one-to-one depth support systems. There are some, you could say, there are pros and cons to any kind of support system. So it's important to understand the strength of each one and why we need them. Okay, I will go more into that in my next session, which is the last of the series. But for now, I just want to say, when you're building foundations, you cannot build foundations, really, without one-to-one depth support systems, okay? You have to move beyond group things. You have to move beyond group retreats, community-based formation. All that does not help you build your interior foundations. So please, please, please pray about and find out about how you can begin, if you haven't already, find some of these one-to-one depth support systems, okay? And then even for retreats, so like I said, there are many times there are retreats that have certain programs to work through. Some retreats are very input focused, so it's like a lot of talks and a lot of sharing. When you're talking about building foundations, what will be more helpful are not those kind of retreats, but individually directed retreats. So again, being able to have someone and space meet you where you're at. So you have as much time and space as you need to be where you are at. All right, that's so important for foundation building. So individually directed retreats should be what you begin to look at and start having more regularly, maybe let's say once a year or something like that. Okay, and less of those big community retreats where it's just talk after talk and just sharing. Remember, when we're talking about interior life, the first order of things, like ontologically, okay, sorry for throwing in such a big word there, but it's not that sharing with others is not important, but when you haven't connected deeply with yourself and you haven't connected with God, and you go straight to sharing, it tends to be very superficial. We're just sharing what comes off the top of our head. We feel like, the first insight, maybe that we have based on the input that we have heard, for example. If you have just a little bit of time for reflection, that's better than nothing. But still, the more time you have alone to be in solitude, to marinate in what you've received, or what you've learned, to give that time and space for things from deeper down deeper within yourself to come to the surface without being rushed, to spend quality time with yourself. Remember, it's about attunement to yourself and attunement to God attuning to you. Think about the early stages of building any significant relationship. You need more exclusive time alone with this person to get to know that person, to build a strong relationship with that person, to learn how to repair that relationship when there's a rupture with that person. And in this case, when we talk about interior journey, you need to learn how to do that with yourself and with God first, before you can look at how this impacts your relationship with others, right? So that's why one-on-one is very, very important. Okay, so that was the root stuff. Give you some sense of the root kind of work. Now, when you've been doing root work for a while, and there's no such thing as being perfectly healed in our foundations, okay? I don't think in this side of heaven, in our life, that we will ever reach like perfection of healing. But as you're getting more grounded, and you will feel the difference. You know that you're, getting more grounded. You are more self-aware and more able to regulate yourself when you feel, difficult emotions, when you get dysregulated. Then you will realize that you're more ready to look at yourself. So think about it, okay? Earlier on, when we're talking about foundation work, we are not even really ready to look at ourselves in all honesty, because it's so scary. When we don't have a healthy attunement and unconditional acceptance of ourselves, we can be our harshest critic, right? And our image of God may be one that is also just waiting to catch us doing something wrong, or someone who will withdraw his love for us when we are making mistakes, when we're not showing up the way we think he wants us to show up. We are living in fear. With that insecurity, we wouldn't be able to have the calm, the confidence to really look deeper at ourselves and go, what's going on there? This thing's a little dysfunctional, or why do I keep reacting this way? I don't quite like the way that I'm reacting. But you see, I may not like it, but I'm not judging it, because I love myself and I'm not in touch with that love that I have for myself. So when I begin to have more confidence in being loved by God and by myself, I will find I'm more able now to work on the higher order things, to begin to look more deeply at who I am, at who I am not, and who God may have created me to be and is calling me to be in the work that he's giving me, right? So first of all, part of the higher order work would be becoming clearer about our life scripts or our programming, right, that often trap us in our false self versus our authentic true self. Without a certain level of grounding and foundation, like a healthy foundation, we will find we can't really see the difference between our false self and our true self, because you see, our false self is not a bad thing. It's our defense mechanisms. A lot of that is like our trauma responses. We need that to feel safe. So it's only when we have firm ground or firmer ground beneath our feet, then we can begin to look at these coping mechanisms that have been helping us in the past, but now we're ready to see them, differentiate them from who we are authentically, and maybe let them retire. Like, let some of these life scripts that have helped us survive retire or take a back seat and not rule our reactions anymore, right? Another part of building upon foundation or canopy work would be then I can now clarify my unique strengths. I can now maybe discern my charisms, my motivations, my temperament, my personality, all that, right? I can now look at the unique way that I was created, that God created me, in a way that, because I can tell the difference between my authentic self and not just my trauma responses, right? When I haven't built this foundation yet, when I can't yet differentiate between my false self, like I can't identify when I'm acting out of my life scripts, when I'm acting defensively, I can try and go through programs and, assessments and instruments. In fact, I'll tell you that's what I did. I was so interested in all these things. I attended charism discernment programs. I'm actually trained at one point. I mean, I have been, I used to be interested in giving workshops on how to discern your charisms. That's why I'm a licensed Myers-Briggs practitioner, right? MBTI, why I learned to use the motivation code. All of these they are instruments, and there were more, that I availed myself to because I wanted to figure out who I am. But I didn't know when I was going through all that initially that my false self was often in the way. So how I've been showing up in the world was not really my authentic self. It's kind of blurred and mixed. So it's hard for me to make that kind of discernment because I was actually acting on faulty data. Okay, so that's why it's important to build your foundation first. Then when you go through instruments or programs, whatever it is that tries to help you clarify your uniqueness, you can tell when you're looking at the data, is this coming up from my coping mechanisms or is this really part of who I really am? There are different markers, okay, for these, which I'm not going to go into now because that's a whole other thing. And that's part of my clarity coaching journey, that's why it's 8 months long. All right. There are nuances. Okay. But when you pick that up and you understand how to use this, it's something you can do for life. And then after you begin to understand how you're unique, that doesn't end there. It doesn't end there. It's a constant refinement. You need to discern and also learn how to empower yourself on how to then show up in relationships, whether it's personal relationships or professional relationships, or what is the way that you're best meant to show up professionally in the world based on the unique self that you are, right? So when you can tell the difference between your false self and your authentic self, and then you begin to clarify what is unique about your true self, your authentic self, the next level after that is how do I align my design with the outer layer of my life, right? Because now if I'm more grounded, there's less of a grip on me, all the shoulds that used to rule me in the past, expectations from others and all that kind of thing. Now I know, okay, that may be the expectation, but this is who I am. And if there's great alignment, fantastic. If there isn't, how do I now work on this misalignment while being true to who I am? Now this is really more advanced stuff, okay? It's it gets really exciting when you're at the point where you can do this level of stuff. There are very few people that I know personally that actually is already there constantly. Having conversations with them is just such a joy because they just need like a few sentences from me and they know just like that. Like, okay, yeah, I know. It's just a reorienting, like, we all get confused sometimes and it's just like, oh yeah, that's right. Now I remember this, and they know what they need to do. All right. And so this is discerning and getting more empowered to learn how to live and use the design that you have to show up in the world. And this is a big part of the process of discerning our personal vocation, that unique work of love that we've been created to offer in the world, right? So, like I said, that for vocation discernment, especially discernment of personal vocation discernment, at least in the circles that I'm in the Catholic circles, a lot of times it's about state of life discernment, right? Like, are you called to be married? Are you called to be religious life? Are you should you be discerning priesthood, etc. Now, the thing is, many people who go through all these retreats and discernment processes haven't built their foundations yet. They can't tell the difference between their false self, their trauma responses, their insecure, they're basically the things, the scripts that they have learned in their life to show up so that people will accept them. They could still be living out of that. And then when they go for these retreats, like vocation retreats, they are going to be discerning based on the false self that they know, because they may not have yet come to know their true selves more deeply or accept their true selves more deeply. This is just a reality. It's just a reality, okay? I'm not necessarily criticizing this, because I know just generally there is very little awareness that there is even these steps, or that the roots need to come first before you can really build on a canopy, right? But to the extent that you realize this, I mean, you can add what is missing yourself, okay? So vocation discernment, and especially personal vocation discernment, is canopy work, okay? Canopy level interior work, not root work. You need root work first to do this properly. So you might wonder, what happens if we don't build or heal our roots first? And I mean, what happens if we try to know our unique gifts and discern our vocation, the fruits in our life, without having healed our roots first? Well, it happens a lot. I mean, that was true for me. I started trying to discern my gifts, my unique gifts, and, my vocation, because I didn't know that my roots were so withered, or needed so much restoration. I had no idea that my roots were in the ICU, for example, right? So this happens a lot. So I want to share this quote that some of you may be familiar with, by Dr. Gabor Mate in the book The Myth of Normal. And it's so true. So what he says is, what we call the personality is often a jumble of genuine traits and adopted coping styles that do not reflect our true self at all, but the loss of it. It's so beautiful, actually, I think. It's a little sad, maybe, if you think so, but it's true. Our personality, so basically it's like how we show up, the experience that people have of us, right? Sometimes even to the extent of our extroversion or introversion, whether we're a people person or we're not, or we are very cerebral, whether we are very, very planned and organized, for example, or we're just very free-spirited, whether we are really, really responsible about finishing everything that we start, or we tend to like to start things and then move on. These are, you'd think that when you take assessments and stuff to try and differentiate, to tell you how you show up, that these will tell you or be an accurate reflection of your real self. But you see, all these assessments like MBTI and M-Code, which is these are instruments that I use, it's not the nature of these instruments to take into consideration trauma. Okay, it's just not in the nature. And for example, in the Myers-Briggs, when I went for training to be certified in Myers-Briggs, it's very clear. They say, look, the caveat is this is for mentally stable and healthy people, right? But what is mentally stable and healthy? When we learn and understand about complex trauma, we realize that all of us, to varying degrees, are hurt and traumatized, and therefore maybe not completely stable, right? Or healthy. So to the extent that we haven't differentiated between our false self and our true self, when we go through these assessments, we may not actually even be able to see accurately, which ones are our trauma responses and which ones are really who we are. Again, there's actually a way to tell the difference, right? But that's a little bit deeper. I can't go into that. There's a way to tell the difference, but to be able to use that method to tell the difference, you need to have a certain level of foundational grounding already in feeling safe in yourself, in being able to look honestly at yourself. Okay? So if you haven't done your foundational healing work and you try to figure out your unique gifts, your unique personality and all that, this is what you're up against. Okay? You may not realize that some of what the instrument is picking up or discernment is picking up could be your coping mechanisms, right? So if you don't build foundations first, you will lack the grounding of the secure internal attachment with yourself and with God that you need to face the truth that sets you free to be you. Right? So when we're talking about becoming who we are, when we want to know what makes us unique and we want to discern our unique mission and call, we need ultimately to be free and confident enough to be who we are, right? So in order to have that freedom, we need that grounding, okay? So if I don't build foundations first, we can try, but we'll find that we won't actually be able to move when we know we want to move. So you can avail yourself to resources meant for beyond the foundations, right? Canopy work, and find that you don't get that much out of it and whatever you invested in it. That was the case for me. I always still manage to find some use. It's often that you can find some usefulness, but you're not getting the most out of it. And sometimes you will find later on that actually what you had earlier on was there was some flawed data, so you need to redo it, or do it again, right? Hopefully, if in the process you are working with people who know what they're doing or are familiar that there are these different levels, you might be redirected to the foundation building resources, okay? So you may be trying out these higher order, like Canopy interior work stuff, and maybe someone, the one who is facilitating it, whatever, will share with you, tell you that, okay, maybe you're not getting so much out of this because there's some other stuff you need to do first. Maybe you go and do that first before you come back to this, okay? So for me, in my own journey, I had to figure that out on my own, that there weren't really people who know this, because it's often very siloed as in very separate. So for example, when I was going through Myers-Briggs or M-Code coaching myself, the coaches or the trainers that I had, they were really good in the instrument, in using the instrument, but they didn't understand trauma, or they didn't understand this false self, true self thing. So they can't connect the two together for me, right? So that's something that I picked up over time, and I'm finding that that's really helpful. And with the people that I work with, especially my clients, oftentimes I will share with them, okay, this is what's coming up, and this is some other work that you need to do first before you can really get the benefits of what we're doing here, right? I mean, over the years, I've been learning too, through experience of working with people at different points of the journey, how these things fit and what is it that they need. So when you go beyond foundations, what are the kind of resources that you need? So we will continue to need individual one-to-one support. That is something that I think is the mainstay, right? With professionals and mentors who are equipped and experienced, but to work at deeper levels. So the foundational kind of work is quite different from the deeper Canopy kind of work. So for example, like foundational work is how to attune to yourself, right? How to heal and begin to heal the relationship that you have with yourself and with God, how to begin to hear God, to discern. Those are foundational stuff, foundational work. When you move to Canopy work, then you're going to be looking at, okay, now I've learned the basics, I have a better foundation. How do I clarify, who I am, or the design? How do I tell the difference between my false self and true self? And how do I have a more concrete grasp or a handle on the unique design that I have been given? And how do I use this design, or how do I live from this design? And how do I match this ultimately with the life work or the vocation that I've been called to? You realize they're very different. They're very different kinds of stuff, right? So understandably, you need different kinds of people with different expertise working with you when you are looking for one-on-one support as well, or any kind of support beyond the foundations, all right? But we still need the one-to-one. So for example, that's why I had a series that I did in my life earlier on about how it's time to change your spiritual director and therapist, right? What are the signs that you can look for, and then how do you choose the right fit? Oftentimes when we are moving from foundations to deeper level work is one of the times when we need to change perhaps a spiritual director or a therapist, because they may have been very helpful with a certain kind of work that we needed, and then now we need something else that they may not be trained in, it may not be their gift to share with us. So beyond the one-on-one work, right, there are, of course, there are retreats, workshops, courses, programs meant to help you deepen your self-knowledge or discern your vocation. So whenever you see things about maybe trying to discern your gifts, your strengths, your, like vocation discernment, just think of it as this is more Canopy kind of stuff, yeah, not foundational. Now, the truth of the matter is many people who offer these higher level Canopy kind of like offerings are not aware of the foundations as well in themselves. So don't expect anytime you sign up for a discernment or a gifts, any kind of like discernment program, that the people teaching it or facilitating it are necessarily aware of what I'm covering in this series. But if you are aware, that's the more important thing, and you come with the awareness that you have built the foundation, then you know how to apply these Canopy kind of like discernment stuff, okay? You have the foundation to hold yourself and see yourself and journey with yourself. Okay, so now the last part of the session is again praxis. Now, after everything I've said, and I know I've said a lot, one of my challenges is always, how do I make it simpler, try and make it shorter? And I promise you, I've already been whittling all this down, right? And there's still a lot to say. For you to internalize what you've heard me say, you need to put it into practice, okay? So this is what I invite you to do. It will help anyone, but if you're watching this as part of preparing to apply to the clarity interior journey, coaching journey, that I'm doing, this is not nice to do, but you need to do this, okay, in order for you to be able to go through the application process. So based on the description that I have given, have you already been tapping on resources for foundation or root building? Because now I've differentiated for you, right? What kind of interior resources focus on the foundation building? Have you already been tapping on resources? What are they? Okay, if you say yes, list what are they? Which are the resources that have been helping you build your foundation? What foundation building resource can you add that you might be able to think of adding that you have not already done? Okay, just based on what you know. Don't worry if you don't know. And it's good that you don't know, right? And then I invite you to make a list of all your past and current resources, okay, that has helped you in your interior journey, or that you've retreats that you have gone for example, and any kind of one-on-one work. Just list all of them, all right, and then sort them out into root versus canopy. So when you, for example, so you list out all the retreats that you attended, let's say in the past 5 years or 7 years, different kinds of workshops maybe, or training and program. And when you went through all of them, you believe that it was to help you build your interior life, right? And maybe there was some, maybe they are meant to impact your interior life. But now go through this list and categorize them. Were they resources that helped me build the foundations, the roots? Or were these resources trying to help me develop the canopy, right? Like it was more like higher order stuff about discerning my gifts and where I'm called and what kind of life or what kind of vocation maybe God is calling me to. So that would belong to canopy, okay? And then when you've sorted them out, your list, root or canopy, do you notice any gaps? Are there any glaring gaps, for example? Are they evenly distributed? Maybe you can even look at what's the order of them in which you've done, because you didn't have this awareness before, perhaps. Might you have gone for canopy programs and resources before you had built your roots? And then ask yourself, how much have you grown in your roots and your foundation since you started your interior journey, right? So the root kind of work, the attunement and all that. How much have you grown in your roots? Are you at the beginning still, you feel? Are you kind of like in the middle of building your foundation? Or do you feel, like I said, we're always going to be in process of deepening our roots. We never stop doing root work, okay? And it's very important we never stop doing root work. But, might you be in a situation where, okay, I realize now I actually have a pretty good foundation. I've had people who could help me grow in attunement and repairing my relationship with myself and becoming more attuned to how God is loving me. And now I need to go beyond the foundations, right? Might you be there? Okay, so that's it for today's session. And next session, which will be the final of the series, what I'll be doing is I'm going to just go through a little bit for you to understand the difference between, so until now we're going to be looking just at resources, okay? The next session, we're going to be looking at interior resources, and then now you have understanding of root versus canopy kind of resources. What we haven't kind of looked at is a bit of the, what are the strengths and the weaknesses or the, of different kinds of working. So for example, one-to-one kind of resources like spiritual direction and therapy versus group kinds of resources. What's the difference? What are their strengths, the particular strengths? And then another difference would be free flow or very organic kind of resource that support our interior journey versus more curriculum-based, right? Journey. Again, what are their strengths? When might we want to prioritize one of these ways of working, right? Depending on where we are. How do we tell what is it that we need more of in this particular season? And then after that, I would have laid the proper foundation for me to talk about the clarity coaching journey, okay, as it is going to be happening this year. So this program or this offer that I have has also evolved over the years as I continue to refine and my understanding on what works best, who it works best for, what are the gaps that people have, or what are the gaps in the industry, you could say in general, and where I can contribute. So I've shared all these, these sessions, these 4 parts, really also because I want to be able to help you place what I do in clarity, so that those of you who are thinking of applying for clarity, or maybe just curious about what clarity is, you will be able to understand where it fits in this larger picture, okay? And whether it will be helpful or not helpful, or when it might be helpful for you. So that's it. I hope that you've enjoyed these first 4 parts of this series. I really have never gone in this depth before in any of my podcasts or live videos. This is much closer to the depth at which I go when, within actual paid containers. The difference being this is still pretty much one way because I'm recording this live, but there's not much time for interaction. But within, let's say, my coaching containers or even the do-it-yourself online course that I have, A Leader's Spirituality, there are pauses for you to digest, reflect, to do some kind of a praxis exercise, because that's always important, right? And then for Q&A, if there is a live component within the container. So I leave you with this. I hope it has blessed you. Thank you so much for receiving what I have to share. And I look forward to sharing part 5 with you in the next live. Bye.